Welcome back again to a little bit more iOS programming. Today what we're going to be playing with is we're going to be starting off the Lab 1 projects. So the idea of this course is that you get a lot out of learning to do things yourself. So the labs are a big part of this course. So the first lab that we're going to be working on is going to be called Hello World. Or sorry, that one you already done. The lab number 1 is some work with UI control objects. So you can click on this and you can see what the lab projects are going to be. What the lab projects are going to be is there's a color slider one that we're going to work on, a scorekeeper, and a tic-tac-toe game. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on these things for your lab, but because you're so new to iOS programming, we're going to do some of it together. So your very first assignment is going to be this color slider app. And so what we're going to do, since it's so new in the course, is we're going to do the iPhone version together today in class, beginning to end, all the way through. And then your lab assignment is going to be to make it a universal app. What I want you to do for the lab assignment is I want you to start over from scratch to use a window-based application. But what we're going to do in class is we're going to use a view-based template, and we're going to put this thing together from scratch. Also, if you want, for all these apps, I gave a couple of icon files. If you like icon files, you're more than welcome to grab the icon files. They are not really necessary. I just find icons fun, right? So there's little icon files for all of them. So the color sliders have icon files. So let's go ahead and start doing this thing. So open up Xcode, create a new project. For the lab project, you're going to use a universal window-based application, but today we're going to use a view-based application. We're going to go ahead and put it together for the iPhone, and we're going to call it Color Slider iPhone, if I could talk. So Color Slider iPhone. And we're going to start sticking this thing together. Because I've got the icon files handy, I'm going to go ahead and add those first. I'm going to go ahead and do, I like quick keys, so Command Option A includes an existing file. I'm going to go ahead and grab those downloads. I'm going to go ahead and bring in all those icon files. I only really need icon.png. The 72 is for the iPad, and then the @2x is for the high resolution devices like the iPhone 4, the iPod Touch 4th Gen. And so the idea is that if you build and run, you can see that the icon works or not in the simulator, and you can see that it works or not because you can see that it shows up here. Let's fix the name while we're at it. You should always fix the names. There's some things on the store that don't have the name fixed. It seems crazy. We'll just call it Color Slider and the display name. So now if you run it, you can see it says Color Slider, and it's got a little icon. I get sick of the white icon, so I made little icons for you. Well, sorry, I ripped off icons off the internet. Oh well. Okay, so let's make this thing. What this thing is going to look like is it's going to look like this. So what it's going to have is it's going to have 4 sliders. The sliders are going to control the red content, green content, blue content, and alpha content of this sample. So you can say this one's got the red all the way up, no green, no blue, alpha pretty high, looks nice and red. This one has red and green. They go together and make yellow when there's no blue. Alpha pretty high. If the alpha was low, it would just kind of, you would see the gray come through almost exclusively. So we're going to go ahead and make this app. The first thing that you should probably do when you're trying to design an app is to try to think about, what are my outlets going to be? What are my actions going to be? This is going to be a nice single view app, so nothing too complex. And you can see that as these sliders move, the numbers change over here. So we're going to have an outlet to this label, that label, that label, that label. So these 4 labels. The ones over here don't change. So these 5 labels we don't need outlets for, so just these 4. And then anytime the slider moves, we want the color to change down here and the label to change. So we actually need actions on all 4 sliders. Even though all 4 sliders have actions, there's going to be only one function that's called. So we'll make a function called, slider changed or something like that. And then also what we're going to do is, if you're clever, when that action changes, you can see what object sent that action. But we're going to make our lives easier, and we're just going to have outlets to the 4 sliders as well. So we're actually going to make a total of 4 outlets for the labels, 4 outlets for the slider, and then if we want to change this color, we're going to have an outlet to this as well. And this is actually just a UI view object here. So step 1 is to just go ahead and make this thing an interface builder. This is kind of the fun and easy step. It's kind of like playing with a paint program. Since we use the view-based application, all the connections are made for us. The only thing we need to do is we need to go into the color slider iPhone view controller zip file and start laying some of this stuff out. So we'll start by dragging things over. So we'll go ahead and make a UI label. We'll plop a label on here. I'm going to call it red. And then we'll go ahead and plop one on the other side as well. I'm going to say 0.50. So it's actually going to start off as the correct value. You don't have to do that. You could start it off as the wrong value just to see that you can fix it. And then I'm also going to start it off with a slider. Sliders, you can set the range on the sliders. So if you hit Command 1, you can see their properties. You can set the minimum, maximum, and then whatever it's currently at. It just so happens that this is what I wanted. So I want a value from 0 to 1, and I wanted to start it off in the middle. Other tricks that you can use to try to make your life easier is I'm going to highlight all these objects. I'm going to hold down the Option button, and I'm going to drag it down. And then I'm going to do it again, and then a 3rd time. You can see that this is a really easy way to drag a copy, which can make your life easier when you're trying to get things set up. And so we'll change these. And then just to make a point later, I'm going to start this one off intentionally wrong. So I'll start the bottom one off wrong just so you can kind of see something that's going to happen there. And then I'm going to add to the bottom a label that says color sample. And then I'm going to add a view right on here that we're going to change the color on this view. So we've got things kind of laid out here. There are plenty of things that we could change to deal with auto rotation. We could fix some of them. Like this one, we'd probably want link to the right side. Link it to the right. Link it to the right. I haven't really thought about how this is going to look. I guess when I rotate, it's going to get too scrunched. Yeah, it is going to get too scrunched. So I suppose I shouldn't even bother to fix this stuff. These I would want to stretch all the way across. Stretch all the way across. And you know, whenever you make a real app, you'll have to worry about what you're going to do with auto rotation. And if your life is simple, you can use these tools to get the auto rotation how you want. If you need more control, you'll see in Chapter 5 how you can do some of that. I gave it a foolhardy effort because whenever I rotate it, it's going to suck. It's going to scrunch. But what you're going to do. Alright, so got these things laid out. What I'd really like to do next is I'd like to start making some connections to them. But I haven't got anything to connect to. So I'm going to go ahead and close down Interface Builder. I'm going to go make some connections. You'll find I close Interface Builder all the time. I could just go back to Xcode, but I kind of like to close it just because I only like to have one zip file open at a time. It gets pretty confusing otherwise. Once Xcode 4 comes out, that concern will go away, but that's how I do it now. Cool, so let's go ahead and start adding some of those outlets. This is actually one thing that Xcode has come under fire for because there's a lot of boilerplate code. You'll get a feel for it here in a second. So red slider value is the name of a label. There used to be even more before properties, so just count yourself lucky. RGB, so we've got a green slider value, a blue slider value, an alpha slider value, so we've got all four labels. And then we've also got 4 sliders, so I'm going to call it red slider, and then green slider, and blue slider, alpha slider. And then we've also got the view at the bottom that we want a connection to. I'm just going to call it color sample view. So we've got ivars. There's number 1. Step number 2 is we want to make properties for all of our ivars. We're going to use the standard non-atomic retain IB outlet. And so I'm going to paste that in front of all 9. Lovely. And then while I'm here, I'm going to go and add that action, just because I know that that's coming. IB action. Slider changed. I'm going to go ahead and pass the sender along, just because I do that out of habit. I'm not going to use the sender, so I could just as easily take it off, but I'm kind of used to having it there, so I go ahead and leave it on. Alright, next step, I'm going to go ahead and copy this IB action over, just because I happen to have my cursor on it. And then I'm going to say slider changed. I like to put a quick little log message in there just so that I can test all my connections before I get like too deep into programming. Now I'm going to go back to these 9. So I've got ivars, I've got properties. Anytime you've got a property, you need to synthesize the property. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to synthesize each one. When you synthesize it, all you need is you just need the pointer name. So you don't need any of the declaration information. So you don't need the type of class. You don't even need the star. You just need to say the pointer name. So synthesize this pointer. You could actually do this all on one line. You could say synthesize red slider value, comma, green slider value, comma, blue slider value. But given the way I copy paste, it's just as easy to do individual lines. So we've got properties. We've synthesized the properties. The next thing we need to do is any property that uses the retain keyword. If you use retain here, then you're responsible for your memory management, and you've got to release it in the dealloc method. So each of these we're going to release. Eventually you get pretty good at generating this code, but it is always kind of tedious. So I'm going to release all of them. And then, we're not done yet. Since this is a view controller, in order to save memory, if you have a multi-view application and this view is no longer visible, then this view is going to get unloaded. And then if this view becomes visible again, it'll get loaded again. The trouble is that even though it unloads the view, these things will still take up memory because you've got a retain on them. So inside view did unload, you're supposed to release your hold on them. So if the view gets unloaded, then you no longer care about these things. The recommended style here is to set it to nil. Avoids the risk of over-releasing issues. So we're going to set it to nil. And it's kind of funny, whenever the view gets loaded next time, the problem would get fixed up, but you don't want it fixed up then. You want it fixed up as soon as somebody drops this view. So anything that you can reload later, you should get rid of in the unload method. So, there were a lot of them. We had to make an iVar. Since we wanted to reference it in Interface Builder, have public reference to it, we needed to make a property. Since we made a property, we had to synthesize the property. Since there was a retain in the property, we have to release it. And since this is part of a view controller, we had to do view did unload. So we typed these in 5 places. That's the boilerplate code that I'm talking about. Whew. Let's go ahead and make our connections. So we open up our zip file again. We've now got 9 connections here, and we've also got that action that we can make. Just for a little variety, instead of control dragging to them, I'll click on Files Owner, I'll click on its connections, and I'll drag from here. It all works just the same. This is probably not the recommended solution, but I was just showing you that you could do something different. So, color sample view, that's this one. Green slider, that's here. Value, that's there. Red slider, that's there. Red slider value. And then for action changed, what you want from the slider is not touch up inside. That doesn't really make sense. You want when the value changed, and that's actually pretty common for sliders. It's also common for UI buttons. It's actually so common that if you control drag from it and just make a connection, it'll default to value changed, which is kind of nice. Buttons default to touch up inside. Sliders and switches default to value changed. So we've connected the 4 actions. We've also connected all the different outlets. So we've got all the outlets are connected. The 4 actions are connected. So we've made our interface builder connections. So let's go ahead and run this guy. And whenever a slider moves, it should say slider changed value. So if I want to see that log, I hit Command-Shift-R. And now whenever I move a slider, you can see that it sticks up a whole bunch of slider changed. So make sure that they all do it. Great. So you can see that the logs are happening, but nothing's happening on the screen yet, right? So these numbers are not changing. This is not changing. And so let's go ahead and fix those things. So what we want to do is, our goal is we want to update all 4 labels, and we also want to update the sample color. So as we've done before, we have to figure out how to change the text on the label. Because we did it last time, I won't look it up again, I'll just do it. So I'll say green slider value dot text. Oh, I messed up my own standard. Usually I end in the type of class, so I should have said red slider value label is what I really should have said there to follow like my own personal naming conventions. Doesn't really matter. And what we want to set that text to is we want to set it to a string. We're again going to use the class convenience method for a string that's called string with format. And we're going to set it to a 0.2% F. .2 says how many decimals to show. It's a standard formatted print stream option. I think it'll default to a leading 0, but I think I could put a 0 in there if it doesn't. And what I want to print out here is I want to print out the red slider's value. Since we haven't used sliders before, I'll go ahead and look it up to see what that property is called. So to bring up my help, I did Command Option Shift question mark, and you can see that it's got a property on here. You can see that that property called value is a float, and you can use this to set where the slider is, or you can use it to read it. And so we're going to use it to read it. So if I say self red slider value, that will give me the float, and now I'll set it to that label. So let's go ahead and see if that worked. So whenever I move the slider, you can see that the label automatically updates. Cool. It's usually good to do something once before you mass produce it. So I check to make sure it works once, and then I'm going to do it 3 more times. Bink, bink, bink. So I've got red, I've got green, I've got blue, I've got alpha, and I'm going to set those to the green slider, the blue slider, the alpha slider, and now we should be able to run this thing. One thing you'll notice is that you'll notice that when I launch it, this one still says 999, but as soon as I move it, so even if I move the red one, you can see it fixes anybody that was wrong. And that's just kind of a convenience of the way we wrote this code. You'll also see that the color sample is not changing yet. That's not surprising. But you can see that all the labels are moving with their sliders. Oh, I got to see how the auto rotation looks. Oh, I didn't support auto rotation. I know that this is going to be a disaster because there's no way it's all going to fit. But I'm just curious. So I'm going to say return yes so long as it is not portrait upside down. This is going to be a disaster. Oh, that's not all bad. So you can see that we can use it in the landscape mode as well. Obviously some things I should fix, but in general it doesn't look terrible. Alright, so back to the important things. Oh, portrait upside down is not supported, but this one's supported, and that one's supported. By the way, to shift back and forth quickly, I hold down Command and I hit the left and right arrows. Alright, next up, we want this color to match what these colors are saying. So what we need to do is we need to change the view. So we need to change something about the view. So self dot color sample view dot. We need to know what property to set. So you can look up in help to see what properties there are on view, and we want to change the color. So you look through here. You can read information about it, but usually if you just look through the properties, one will seem promising. This one looks promising. Background color. Background color can be used to set the color. Background color is a UI color object. So we're going to have to create a UI color object. So I want to say background color. That is equal to, I want a UI color here. And so let's go ahead and click on UI color, and it'll bring up the UI color class reference. And you can see if there are any methods in here that would be helpful. So we'd like to create a new color from those red, green, blue, and alpha values. Looking through at the different things, you can see we can make a color with hue, saturation, brightness. And then this one seems awfully promising. Color with red, green, blue, alpha. So this function is expecting a red component from 0 to 1, a green, a blue, and an alpha. So this is perfect. Obviously I knew this existed before I made this example. So we want to say class UI color. We would like to call your class method color with, red. You can see as soon as I type the R, it auto-completed. I'm going to hit Tab. And for the red color, I'm going to say self.redSlider.value. The green, I'm going to say green slider value. You can see that with autocomplete, I mean, I type fast, but I don't type this fast, right? You can start to do things really effectively if you get to know autocomplete. And then, like I've said many times, Xcode 4 makes it even easier. It has this cool little drop-down list. That's great. So now we're setting the sample color whenever something changes. Let's go see if that works. So now you should be able, again you'll notice that it started off with a 999 and it started off white. We'll fix that in a little bit. But as soon as I move somebody, you can see that it goes to the correct color. So 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 is kind of a gray color. It's actually that color. And then if I bring the alpha down, you can see eventually it becomes transparent. And you should be able to change the sliders. So if I want to make it blue, I can do that. Black, red, yellow, magenta. Oh wait, cyan. What's magenta? It's red and blue, I assume. Yep, there's magenta. So you can play with this to kind of get a feel for what the different colors are. But these are the components that go into making colors. So it's kind of a neat little sample app. So the only thing that I wanted to change is I didn't like how when it starts, oh I forgot it's using, it's funny, the simulator actually uses backgrounds as well. So it started from there because it was still in memory. If you want to kick something out of memory, you can double click home to bring this up, and you can hit the X there, and you can see that actually booted it out of memory. So when it started up, the thing I didn't like is that it started off white here, which I don't want. Started off saying 999 there, which I don't want. So whenever this thing starts up, I want to load, I basically want to run a slider changed right from the start. So what I really want to do is I want to find a place where code's going to run from the start. That is not a init with nib name. It is not load view. It is in fact view did load. View did load is a method that automatically gets called when the view controller is loaded. The name is pretty descriptive, right? So when the view loads, what we really want to do is we want to do all this same code. So one option is, of course, I could copy it and stick it in there, but I don't want to do that because that's just terrible coding practice. I could from here call slider changed, and that would work. But instead what I'm going to do, just so I can show you some things, I'm going to create a separate function. I'm going to call it update view. And I'm going to stick all that stuff in here. So whenever I want to update the view, I'm going to call this function. It's an internal function that only people inside this class should call, so I use the naming convention where it starts with an underscore. And in order to call that method, what you need to say is you need to say self update view. And if you hit save, it'll even help autocomplete for you. You can see that it's passed no parameters, and it doesn't return anything. So in both of these, I'm going to call update view. So let's go ahead and build and run this guy again. And it should update the view right when it launches. So it launches, and you can see it updated right away, and it updated the color sample to the appropriate value as well. So all these little things that you want to make sure you get right before you release an app. Last thing I want to show you real quick is I was careful to put this before I called the function. People that are C programmers will be very familiar with this concept. But let's say I wanted to organize it to where it was at the bottom, which is not uncommon. I actually do this all the time. I also like to add these little pragma things, so internal. All these pragma things do is they make little divisions in the drop-down list. So you can see that my internal methods are here, and I like to add those pound pragma. You can see that I added a dash, which added this line, and then I said internal methods. If I hit build now, it actually throws a warning that it says it may not respond to update view. If I run it, it'll work just fine because everything's done dynamically in Objective-C. But I don't like warnings. I don't want warnings. To get rid of the warnings, what you can do is you can give them a prototype, basically. And so the way this works, I'll go ahead and type it first, and then I'll talk a little more, is you're going to say, hey, there's a function that exists. It's of type void. It's called update view. I'm going to end it with the semicolon because it's a prototype. And then this will get rid of those warning messages. So I do this all the time. I have this these little internal prototypes for my internal functions, and this is how that sets up. What this is really doing is this is making a category, which is kind of crazy. So you're making a category, and then I didn't name the category. I just left it blank. So I'm actually making a category for my color slider iPhone view controller, and in this category I've got this update view. And the reason this is nice is this is all in the implementation file, so if somebody includes the header file, they won't necessarily know about this function. It turns out that in Objective-C, oops, what did I do? Control-Z. In Objective-C, people can still call just about all of your internal functions because it's so dynamic in nature. But at least this way they'll get a warning. Cool, so that's what I wanted to show you today. We just wanted to get some practice connecting outlets, connecting actions. The more practice you get, the faster you're going to get at doing this stuff. And it takes a while to really learn everything. We also stuck in a few new things, a little bit more Objective-C programming, a little bit about internal methods. We also snuck in a few things about auto-rotation quickly. But hopefully you're starting to get more comfortable with making these single-view applications with a lot of UI controls. It's a really good skill, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it. So what I would like for you to do this evening is to start working on Lab 1. Take what we've done here and make it into a universal app. The reason I want you to do this is it's going to be good practice for making universal apps, and it'll drive home all the concepts we've done today. One thing that you can do to save yourself a little bit of typing is you actually can just import this view controller in if you'd like, or feel free to copy paste because a lot of this is going to be pretty darn similar. Cool, so that is all we've got for today. Tomorrow what we're going to be playing with is the next thing in Lab 1. We're going to be doing an example for a scorekeeper application. We're going to show you that. We're also going to talk about UI controls and UI kit a little bit more. Before class next time, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and do the reading that's in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is a great chapter. You build this UI control fun thing. You learn about sliders, text fields, labels, switches, buttons, alert views, action sheets. It's a great chapter. You'll really like it. Cool, so that's all I got for now. Catch you next time.